Good evening, lovers of history and the world's strange turning points. Tonight we're going to do something very Roman. Measure, cut, pack, and pave our way into power. It's early morning outside the city. You can smell wet soil and crushed stone. A line of men swings mattocks into the ground. Thud, thud, opening a trench. Nearby, a surveyor steadies his groma, those hanging plumb lines barely trembling in the breeze. When he calls a correction, left, a finger's width, a whole landscape quietly obeys. Roman roads weren't decoration. They were an operating system. They moved legions, taxes, court orders, building stone, and grain. They let Rome react faster than rivals and keep provinces tied to the center year after year. The famous phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," is not poetry. It's a logistical fact in basalt. And the roads were built with intent, straight where possible, drained so they didn't dissolve into mud, layered like armor so wheels didn't chew them apart. Milestones turned distance into numbers. Road stations turned distance into schedules. Maintenance laws turned stone into responsibility. Even the width of the roadway mattered. Wide enough for carts, narrow enough to control choke points, predictable enough for marching columns. A censor approving a new route feels the politics in his throat. If I spend on roads, he thinks, I strengthen the republic and hand my enemies fewer chances to call me useless. He wants glory, but he fears being remembered as the man who let traffic, and therefore control, slip away. Soon there will be names. The Appian Way pushing south, the Via Flaminia running north, the long provincial highways that stitch Spain, Gaul, the Balkans, and Syria into one timetable. But before we reach those famous stretches, we start where Rome always starts, with a line on the ground and an argument about where it should go. Because once the first trench is cut, there's only one question left. How do you turn dirt into a highway that can carry an empire? That answer begins with the surveyor's line, and we'll step onto it next. A Roman road begins before a single stone is laid. It begins with men who smell like sun and chalk, walking with poles, cords, and instruments that look simple, until you realize they can straighten a continent. On a hillside, the survey team pauses. Below them, a valley is full of morning fog. You hear goats somewhere unseen, and the click of a stylus on a wax tablet as distances are noted. The groma is set on a tripod. Plumb lines hang still. A lead weight kisses the air. The surveyor sights the next marker and nods. The line is true. For level ground, they use a couriers, a long wooden beam with a water channel, because a tiny error becomes a puddle that becomes a rut that becomes a broken axle. They record boundaries, owners, and obstacles. Then the lawyers arrive with purchase agreements, compensation lists, and, when needed, the quiet threat of eminent domain in a toga. Route choice is politics. A straight road is faster, but it may cut through a powerful landowner's fields. A safer road may detour, but detours cost time and money for decades. The censor or provincial governor must decide which enemies to make today in order to move troops tomorrow. An ambitious official, think of Appius Claudius in 312 BCE, feels that tension like a thorn. If I bend the route for the nobles, he thinks, they'll praise me, and the army will curse me for every extra mile. But if he forces a straight line, he risks lawsuits, sabotage, and whispers in the Senate. He signs the order anyway, because Rome rewards the man who delivers results, not harmony. Surveyors also think in water. They look for slopes that can be drained, for ground that won't sink, for places where a culvert can be cut under the road. Marshes mean raised causeways. Hills mean cuttings. Rocky ridges mean time with picks and wedges. By the end of the survey, the route is marked by stakes and stone cairns. Farmers can already guess what comes next: labor demands, land purchases, or land seizures. A road is arriving, and it doesn't arrive gently. In the next chapter, the real work starts. The trench, the layers, the pounding of gravel until the earth feels like it has been disciplined. Rome is about to build strength you can walk on. The first cut is ugly and loud. Spades bite into soil with a wet tear. Roots snap. A cart dumps rubble with a crash that makes sparrows scatter. The trench, fossa, runs along the survey line like an open wound, wide enough for traffic, deep enough to carry weight through winter rain. A foreman walks the edge, boots sinking, checking depth with a measuring rod. He tastes grit in his teeth and thinks about the schedule. If I dig deeper, the road lasts, he tells himself. But the magistrate will accuse me of wasting stone. If he digs shallow, it will fail and he'll be blamed anyway. In Rome, even dirt can be a courtroom. Now the layering begins. First comes the statumen, large stones set as a base, like a crude mosaic. Over that, the rudus, smaller stones and gravel mixed with lime, dumped and rammed hard. Sometimes with heavy tampers, sometimes with the feet of exhausted men marching in place. Above that, the nucleus, finer gravel and sand, packed until it becomes almost a cemented slab. Each layer is about one thing, spreading loads so wheels don't punch through. Then comes the shape. Roman roads are often slightly raised in the center, the camber, so rain runs to the sides. Ditches are cut for drainage. In wet ground, they may add extra layers or build an agger, a raised embankment faced with stone. In marshes, timber piles and brush can stabilize the base, a hidden skeleton under the stone skin. A military engineer inspects the layers and feels his own fear of humiliation. If my foundation fails, he thinks, the legion's wagons stall, the campaign stalls, and my name becomes a joke in the officer's mess. He orders more ramming, even as men groan. By late afternoon, the trench is no longer a trench. It's a compacted structure, quiet, hard, ready. And that's when the most visible part begins. The paving stones, fitted so tight, they can survive centuries of iron rims. In the next chapter, we watch the surface take shape and learn why good roads are really good water management. The paving crew works like a team of careful gamblers. A stone is lowered with ropes. It lands with a dull, heavy kiss. Another is tried, lifted, swapped. You hear the ring of iron chisels trimming edges, and the sharp crack when a wedge splits a block cleanly. Dust hangs in the sunlight like flour in a bakery. For major roads near cities, Romans often used tough volcanic stone, basalt, because it resists grinding wheels. The surface slabs are fitted tightly, sometimes polygonal, sometimes more regular, set on the prepared nucleus. Curbstones line the edges, keeping the roadway from crumbling outward. In towns, stepping stones can be placed across streets so pedestrians cross above the muck, high enough for cart axles to pass between. Here's the part people miss. The road is designed to shed water on purpose. The camber sends rain to the sides. Side ditches and gutters carry it away. Culverts, small arched passages, let streams cross under the road instead of washing it out. If water lingers, frost breaks stone, mud swallows wheels, traffic slows, the state looks weak. Drainage is authority in disguise. A local magistrate rides out to inspect the work. His cloak smells of damp wool, and he tries to look impressed while counting costs in his head. If I demand perfection, he thinks, the contractor hates me and delays. If I accept flaws, he thinks, the first flood exposes me in front of the town. He chooses to reject a batch of poorly cut stones and instantly makes an enemy who knows where he lives. The finished surface is not perfectly smooth. Roman roads can be bumpy, but it is firm, predictable, and reparable. And that matters, because repairs are constant. Slabs can be lifted and reset. Sections can be rebuilt without abandoning the whole route. As the last stones go in, someone carves a small mark on the underside, an invisible signature. Rome is building a road, but it's also building a workforce that learns technique and repeats it across provinces. Next, we meet the problem every road eventually faces: rivers. To keep a timetable, you need bridges, and the Romans will build them like they plan to stay forever. A river crossing is where a road either keeps its promise or embarrasses the state. On the bank, the air smells of wet reeds and cold stone. Men shout over the current. A pile driver thumps timber into the riverbed. Boom, boom. Each adar, sending ripples through the water and through the knees of everyone standing nearby. Romans used whatever made sense. For small streams, a simple culvert. For wide rivers, stone arches. For temporary campaigns, timber bridges built at terrifying speed. Stone bridges are the prestige projects. They start with foundations, cofferdams to keep water out, piles or masonry piers to anchor into the bed. Then the arch, voussoir stones cut to shape, set on wooden centering. Remove the centering too early and the arch collapses. Remove it too late and the schedule collapses. A military commander wants the crossing now. The engineer wants it right. You can feel that tension on the site. The engineer, hands raw from lime and rope, thinks, if I slow them down, they'll call me timid. If I rush, the river will take my men and my reputation. He orders extra bracing and risks the commander's anger because physics doesn't respect rank. Bridges also become checkpoints. A small guard post nearby keeps an eye on tolls, smugglers, and movement of strangers. A merchant watching soldiers search carts feels irritation rising. If I protest, I look guilty, he thinks. If I accept, I lose time and money. The bridge has turned geography into control. Once finished, the bridge changes local life. Markets form at crossings. Inns appear. Repairs become a community obsession because when the bridge fails, everything on both sides becomes poorer overnight. And even when there's no bridge, Rome builds causeways and fords, marking safe crossings with stone and signage. The goal is always the same: reduce uncertainty. But a road isn't only stone and arches. It's also information. How far? To where? Under whose authority? In the next chapter, we stop beside a milestone, Rome's simplest, boldest tool for turning distance into obedience. You notice a milestone before you read it. It stands upright beside the road like a quiet officer, waist-high or taller, pale stone against dark soil. In the heat, the letters cast tiny shadows. If you touch it, the surface feels warm from the sun and gritty where travelers' fingers have traced the carving for years. The millenarium does 3 jobs at once. First, it tells distance, usually measured from Rome, sometimes from a provincial capital. Second, it names authority: the magistrate, the governor, the emperor who built or repaired the road. Third, it standardizes expectation. You are X miles from Y is a simple sentence that turns wilderness into something countable. A provincial governor likes milestones because they advertise competence, but he also fears them. If my name is on the stone, he thinks, every pothole becomes a personal insult. That fear is useful. It pushes repairs. Inscriptions often brag about restoration because maintenance is the kind of virtue you can prove in public without giving a speech. Milestones connect to paperwork. Itineraries list routes and stopping points. The famous pudding or map, a medieval copy of a Roman-style road map, shows the empire as a long, practical strip of connections, less like a globe, more like a transit diagram. For an official planning a journey, this is power, knowing how long it should take, where to change horses, where to find water. A courier kneels beside a milestone at dusk, reading by lamplight. He's tired, and his inner conflict is sharp. If I trust the numbers, he thinks, I push my horse and arrive on time. If the next station is closed or dangerous, I ride into trouble. He decides anyway, because his whole job is betting his life against distance. Even ordinary travelers start thinking in Roman units, miles, days, stations, because the road teaches them to. That's how infrastructure reshapes habits without asking permission. Next, we step into the places that make those numbers real. The road stations, inns, stables, and relay points that turn a line of stone into a functioning network. The empire's service stations are waiting ahead. Stand near a roadwork camp at midday, and you'll hear the empire sweating. Hammer on stone, saw on timber, men grunting as they drag blocks on sledges. The smell is a mix of lime, smoke, and bodies, oil on skin, leather on shoulders, and the sour tang of tired breath. Who built Roman roads? The honest answer is, everyone Rome could command or hire. Soldiers often did construction, especially in frontier zones, because an army sitting idle is an army that plots. Enslaved labor appeared on big projects, particularly where land had been confiscated or where punishment was part of the message. Local communities were frequently obliged to supply labor or materials, and private contractors, redemptors, bid for sections, paid by the state, tempted to cut corners unless watched. That, unless watched, is why engineers matter. Rome had trained surveyors, architects, and military engineers, men who carried manuals and habits from one province to the next. A supervising engineer at a site feels the strain between ideal and reality. If I insist on perfect stone, he thinks, The contractor delays and blames me. If I accept cheap fill, he thinks, the road fails and I'm ruined. He walks the trench, kicks the gravel, and demands it be rammed again. Funding is political theater with receipts. A censor in the Republic can allocate money. An emperor later can claim roads as part of his public image. Cities might pay to connect themselves to a main artery because access is profit. A local councillor votes for a road and thinks, if we stay off the network, we stay poor. If we join, Rome's tax men find us faster. He votes yes anyway, because poverty is its own threat. Road building also produces specialists, quarrymen, stonecutters, cartwrights, blacksmiths. It creates a supply chain of its own. Another reason roads multiply once the process is learned. By evening, the camp quiets. Fires glow. Tools are stacked. And somewhere on the route, an official seal is pressed into wax, authorizing travel on state business. That seal leads us to the next chapter. The courier system that rides Roman roads like veins, carrying orders that can change a province overnight. At night, a mancio feels like a small island of light. A lantern hangs over the gate. Inside, you smell warm hay, stew, and the sharp sweetness of wine. Horses snort in the stable, steam rising from their backs. A tired traveler rubs his hands near the kitchen fire while a clerk checks documents with the seriousness of a judge. This is the road network's secret weapon, the stations. Along major routes, Rome established mutations, change points for fresh animals, and mansions, larger official inns with beds, stores, and staff. Together, they support the cursus publicus, the state transport and courier service, formally organized under the empire. With the right permit, an official can cover astonishing distances quickly, hopping from horse to horse like a baton pass. Permits matter because abuse is constant. A station master has his own quiet dread. If I deny a loud official, he thinks, I invite punishment. If I give away my best horses to every bully with a seal, he thinks, I destroy the station and my livelihood. He learns to read people as carefully as he reads documents. Security rides along too. Patrols watch for bandits, and forts near major junctions can respond quickly. The road's predictability is a double-edged sword. It helps officials, but it also tells thieves exactly where a traveler must pass. A courier listening to wolves in the dark thinks, if I stop, I lose the message. If I ride, I might lose my throat. He chooses speed and prays the next station's gate is open. Stations also standardize imperial time. They create official stopping points, official meals, official schedules. And they generate records. Who passed? When? With what orders? Tiny data trails long before anyone used that phrase. All of this exists for one reason. Rome wants to move power faster than problems. In the next chapter, we see the roads at their most obvious job, moving armies, and at their most hidden job, moving supplies, which is where wars are truly won or lost. A legion marching on a paved road sounds like a machine. Sandals slap stone in thousands of beats. Harness rings. Wheels clatter over joints. Dust rises and sticks to sweat, turning faces the color of clay. On the roadside, grass is crushed flat by the same traffic day after day, as if the landscape has learned to stand aside. Roman roads are built for this, predictable movement. A commander can plan march rates, so many miles a day, because the surface won't swallow carts. Supply wagons can follow without turning into wrecks after the first rain. And when speed matters, speed becomes strategy, appearing unexpectedly in a rebellious town, reinforcing a threatened frontier, or catching an enemy before he melts back into hills. A quartermaster in the column feels the campaign's real anxiety. If I misjudge the rations, he thinks, men go hungry and discipline breaks. If I overburden the wagons, we slow and die. He watches a wheel wobble and hears, in that small wobble, the difference between victory and embarrassment. Roads also shape where Rome fights. A battle near a road is easier to supply. A siege without access becomes a gamble. In newly conquered lands, Rome often builds military roads first, straight lines between forts and river crossings, because forts without roads are expensive prisons for your own soldiers. And the road links to the camp. Roman marching camps are laid out to a pattern, with streets and gates aligned. That habit matches the road's habit, standardization. Soldiers do not waste energy inventing order. They repeat it. A centurion watching recruits complain thinks, if they learn the routine, they live. If they don't, they die. He makes them dig ditches faster. When roads work, the empire can move a response. When roads fail, the empire arrives late. And late is how provinces slip away. So yes, roads carry legions. But the deeper story is that they carry the economy that feeds the legions. In the next chapter, we step off the marching line and into the loud, profitable world of merchants and markets that bloom wherever Roman roads meet. By noon at a crossroads, the road smells like money. Fresh bread, garlic, sheep droppings, hot oil from a frying pan. You hear bargaining, laughter, the slap of a fish on a board, the clink of coins tested between teeth. Carts line up for water. A smith hammers a bent wool rim back into shape, sparks jumping like insects. Roman roads create markets because they lower the cost of moving bulk goods. Wine, olive oil, pottery, timber, stone. Things too heavy to carry far on foot suddenly travel. Towns on main arteries grow inns, stables, bathhouses, warehouses. Even cemeteries crowd the roadside, because in Rome, being seen after death still counts. A merchant hauling amphorae feels a practical fear. If the bridge ahead is out, he thinks, I miss the fair and lose the season. He wants to curse the state for tolls and inspections, but he also knows the state's roads are why he can dream bigger than his village. And inspections are real. Custom stations collect duties. Police units and local guards watch junctions. A minor official sitting under an awning feels temptation. If I skim a little, he thinks, who will notice? But the road is also a reporting channel. Complaints can travel. He takes less than he wants, because he fears an audit more than he desires a bribe. Roads also push standardization. Milestones and itineraries tell you where you are. Coinage and weights tell you what something is worth. Contracts become easier because delivery dates become believable. That believability is the empire's quiet profit. But the same network that enriches also extracts. Taxes ride those roads. Conscription notices ride those roads. And when trouble starts, banditry, rebellion, invasion, the road becomes the fastest way for violence to arrive. In the next chapter, we leave Italy's familiar routes and follow the great provincial highways, via Egnatia, via Domitia, and others, where Rome repeats the road formula across cultures, mountains, and languages, with results that are never purely peaceful. High in the Alps, the air is thin and smells of pine resin. You hear rock fall in the distance like slow thunder. A road crew chips at a cliff face, and each strike sends tiny sparks off iron tools. Below, a mule train waits nervously, because one slip here means a cart and a man disappearing into cloud. Rome exported road-making like a recipe. In southern Gaul, the Via Domitia linked Italy to Spain along the Mediterranean, tying ports, colonies, and garrisons into one corridor. In the Balkans, the Via Egnatia ran from the Adriatic across Macedonia toward Byzantium, a route for armies, governors, and trade moving east-west. In North Africa, roads connected fertile plains to harbors, shipping grain. Different landscapes, same priorities. Firm surfaces, drainage, bridges, and control points. A provincial governor in Macedonia studies his route map and feels a sharp concern about reputation. If the road is safe, he thinks, trade praises me and troops arrive on time. If bandits own the passes, Rome blames me. He orders patrols and repairs, knowing the mountains don't care about his letters to the emperor. Roads in rough terrain demand compromises. Straight lines soften into switchbacks. Cuttings and retaining walls hold slopes in place. In snowy regions, crews build with frost in mind, packing bases deeper and using stone that won't shatter easily. Where rivers braid across plains, causeways lift the road above seasonal floods. Each adaptation keeps the same promise, predictable movement, and the road brings Rome's systems with it. Stations, milestones, customs posts, and sometimes new towns planted like nails into conquered ground. Veterans settle along routes, forming Roman-style communities that speak Latin, follow Roman law, and defend the corridor because their land depends on it. A local notable invited into the new order feels an uneasy ambition. If I cooperate, he thinks, my sons gain citizenship and status. If I resist, I gamble everything on a rebellion that may never come. He chooses cooperation and watches the road carry strangers past his door forever. The network now spans thousands of miles, which raises a hard question. How do you keep that much stone from falling apart? The answer, maintenance, bureaucracy, and constant repair, takes us into the next chapter, where the empire's most important workers are the ones nobody celebrates. Maintenance Day is when a Roman road shows its age. After rain, you can smell the roadbed, wet grit and crushed limestone. A crew pries up a sunken slab with iron bars. It rises with a sucking sound. Mud oozes underneath. Nearby, a cart unloads fresh gravel, and the foreman shouts for more tamping because he knows the next frost will punish laziness. Romans didn't assume roads lasted forever on pride alone. They assigned responsibility. Major routes could be overseen by curators viarum, officials who managed contracts, inspected work, and coordinated with local communities. Cities might be obligated to maintain stretches near them. Wealthy patrons sometimes funded repairs for prestige, leaving inscriptions that read like receipts carved in stone. A curator reads a stack of complaints, broken bridge planks, ruts near a station, a culvert clogged with silt. His inner conflict is painfully modern. If I spend on invisible repairs, he thinks, nobody cheers. If I save money for a festival, he thinks, I'm popular now and blamed later. He signs the repair order anyway, because a failed road is a public embarrassment you can't hide. Technically, repairs are straightforward but constant. Reset paving stones, refill the nucleus, rebuild drainage ditches, clear culverts, replace curbs, resurface with gravel where paving is too costly. Sometimes a whole section is rebuilt, digging down to the rudus and starting again. On busy roads near Rome, the traffic itself demands speed. Crews work in narrow windows, guided by shouted rhythm and practiced hands. Inspection is the pressure that makes contracts honest. An engineer checks stone quality and layer thickness. A clerk records deliveries. Penalties exist for shortcuts, at least on paper. Yet corruption is always nearby, especially when budgets tighten. A contractor eyes cheaper fill and thinks, if I cut corners, I profit. If I'm caught, I'm finished. He gambles, because gamblers built plenty of roads too. As long as the state is stable, maintenance keeps the network solid. But stability isn't guaranteed. In the next chapter, the 3rd century crises hit like a hammer blow, and we'll hear what happens when the empire can't pay for the very roads it depends on. A failing road announces itself in small humiliations. A cartwheel drops into a pothole with a crack. A horse slips on loose stones. At a lonely station, the stable smells sour because there isn't enough hay. The fire is low because wood is expensive. The clerk's lamp sputters because oil is rationed. Travelers speak more softly, listening for footsteps in the dark. In the 3rd century, Rome's road system is stressed by everything at once: civil wars, frontier raids, plague waves, and an economy shaken by debased coin. When soldiers are busy backing rival emperors, patrols thin. When tax revenue falters, contractors stop showing up. When coin loses trust, a pile of money buys less stone, less labor, less maintenance. A provincial governor receives a request to repair a key bridge and feels trapped. If I pay for repairs, he thinks, my garrison goes unpaid and mutiny starts. If I don't, supplies can't cross and the frontier collapses. Either choice creates enemies. He delays, then hates himself for it, because delay is how roads die. Banditry grows where predictability used to be safety. The same choke points that helped Rome control movement now help thieves choose victims. Couriers ride in groups when they can. Some stations are abandoned. The cursus publicus is still there, but more brittle. Permits become harder to get, and officials abuse the system because enforcement is distracted. Emperors respond with emergency engineering. Aurelian builds massive new walls around Rome, an admission that the center fears sudden arrival of violence. On roads, authorities focus on the essentials, keeping key military routes open, securing major crossings, prioritizing grain corridors. It's tree of, not perfection. A road engineer, older now, walks a damaged section and feels bitter pride. I built this to last, he thinks. But stone can't compete with unpaid workers and panic. He orders the crew to patch what they can with whatever they have, because even a rough road is better than no road. The network survives, but it changes. And then reformers arrive with a hard idea. If you can't trust money, collect supplies. If you can't trust local goodwill, assign obligations. In the next chapter, Diocletian and his administrators try to relock the road machine back into place, whether people like it or not. In a requisition yard, the smell is grain dust and animal sweat. Sacks are stacked like walls. A clerk counts aloud while a farmer grips a rope tied to his best mule, jaw tight with anger. Nearby, a government wagon waits with fresh seals on its cargo doors, official, unquestionable. Diocletian's reforms, around the late 3rd and early 4th century, aim to make the empire predictable again. Taxes are assessed more rigidly and often collected in kind, food, cloth, animals, so the army can be supplied even when coin is unstable. For the roads, that means transport obligations. Communities may have to provide carts, animals, and drivers for official business. The cursus publicus becomes more regulated and also more demanding. A station master feels squeezed from both sides. If I hand over horses to every stamped order, he thinks, my stable's empty and my family starves. If I refuse, he thinks, I'm accused of sabotaging the state. He learns to hide a strong horse in a back stall and present a slower one with an innocent face, a small act of survival that shows you what pressure feels like on the ground. Constantine then shifts attention east, investing in routes that feed and defend the richest provinces. Constantinople rises at a strategic crossing of sea lanes and road corridors. The old highways, like the Via Egnatia, grow even more important. Repairs and fortifications focus on where threats and wealth concentrate. The road network doesn't disappear, it is reprioritized. An Eastern official supervising roadworks near a new city gate feels the lure of legacy. If these roads shine, he thinks, the emperor notices me. If they fail, I'm the man who slowed the capital. He pushes crews hard, because couriers travel faster than carts. Meanwhile, in the western provinces, political unity weakens over the 5th century. Roads are still used, often by new armies, new kings, new administrators who want Roman-style control, but maintenance becomes uneven. Some stretches stay alive, others crumble into local paths. Which leads to the final practical question: what happens to Roman roads when Rome is no longer paying the bills? In the next chapter, we watch the stones get reused, reguarded, and sometimes fought over, because old highways remain valuable long after empires change names. On a quiet morning in the countryside, you can still step onto Roman paving and hear the old design under your feet. The stones are uneven now, softened by centuries, with grass pushing through joints like stubborn handwriting. If a modern car passes nearby, the vibration feels faintly familiar. Traffic has always been the point. The air smells of damp earth and leaf litter, and the road runs straight enough to make you suspect someone long ago refused to compromise. After the Western Empire fragmented, Roman roads didn't vanish. They were too useful. New rulers charged tolls at Roman bridges. Pilgrims followed Roman routes to shrines. Merchants preferred old paved stretches because a wheel survives better on stone than on mud. And builders recycled Roman stone, spolia, because quarrying fresh material costs time, money, and muscle. A medieval stonemason at a ruined milestone feels a simple conflict. If I take this stone, he thinks, I finish my wall and feed my children. If I leave it, he thinks, I honor a past that won't pay my debts. He takes the stone, because most history is decided by practical hands, not grand speeches. So what did the roads really do? They made movement cheaper and more reliable. They let Rome standardize travel with milestones and stations. They allowed armies to arrive before an enemy expected them, and taxes to arrive before a province forgot it owed them. They created corridors where towns grew, trade thickened, and authority stayed present. And how were they built? With surveying discipline, deep layered foundations, hard surfaces, drainage that defeated mud, bridges that defeated rivers, and, most importantly, maintenance systems that treated repair as governance. When those systems were funded, the roads felt eternal. When they weren't, the network frayed fast. That's the very unromantic secret. Rome's empire rode on tampers, ditches, and contracts as much as on swords. The stones are still here because the method was sound. Next time you see a long, straight road cutting through a landscape, consider the possibility that you're not just looking at a route. You're looking at a Roman idea that never quite stopped traveling. And once you start noticing that, you'll see their lines everywhere.